Hello, my name is Matthew, and we're reading The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky for our read along in December. And we just got to another one of my favorite scenes in the book. It's an incredibly sad, but also very funny and dark episode. It's the death of Father Zozima. But I should say that when we last spoke, Ivan and Alyosha had their conversation in the restaurant, and they left and went their separate ways. Ivan now is in a foul mood, and he makes his way back to his father's house, Fyodor's house, and he runs into Smerdakov outside, and they have this incredibly hostile, tense, ominous conversation. Smerdakov is being mysterious and very suspicious in the things that he is saying and hinting at. He's talking about how he can kind of feel that he might be having an epileptic fit, one of his big year fits that only happen once a year. Ivan, who may or may not be going to Moscow, he finally says that he'll be going to Moscow in the morning, and Smerdakov is saying, "Well, that sounds like a good plan. Like you don't want to be here." And Gregory, who is in a way Smerdakov's adopted father, is going to be sick in bed. There's a very good chance that Smerdakov is going to be completely incapacitated by one of his epileptic fits the very next day, and Ivan will be out of town. And so Fyodor will just be in the house all alone, totally unaccompanied and unsupervised. And it's clear foreshadowing and creating this tension with this hostile conversation between the two of them. It gets Ivan in such a terrible temper that he just storms into the house. He's rude to his father and goes to bed. And the next morning, he tells Fyodor that he is going to Moscow. And Fyodor, his father, asks him if he'll make an unplanned visit, if he'll stop somewhere else out of the way from where he is traveling to visit somebody called the Lurcher, to discuss this business deal that involves timber. It's a timber contract that Fyodor is trying to get, and they go back and forth. Ivan is wavering and being non-committal until the very last moment. Fyodor finally convinces him, and Ivan agrees and says that he will, in fact, before he goes to Moscow, he will visit this man called the Lurcher to go over this business agreement. And Fyodor is giving him advice on how to read his face. You can't listen to the words that he says, and you can't learn anything from his eyes. It's all about the beard. If he is chuckling and laughing, or if he is stroking his beard, you'll determine whether or not he's being honest or deceitful. And at the train station, Ivan has left the house. He's at the train station, and in a whim decides that no, he's not going to visit the Lurcher. He's just going to go on his way, and he gives a message to somebody to return back to his father that he is now not going. And around this point, we get a long interlude. We're given the life of Father Zozima, and we're told very clearly that this is something that was written by Alyosha, and that's important. And I believe that in my reading, that this kind of separate little story, this biography of Father Zosima, works really well as a counterbalance to the conversation that Ivan and Alyosha had, where Ivan tells Alyosha the poem that he had thought up, but he didn't write, of the Grand Inquisitor. And it says so much about the both of them. Here we're just given a transcript of Father Zosima that Alyosha actually wrote. We never hear that he was talking about it or telling anybody about it, but it's something that he wrote. Meanwhile, the Grand Inquisitor is this poem that Ivan never wrote, but apparently tells people and talks about. He says that Alyosha was the first person that he had told it to. And one of the chief characteristics that started as soon as we met Ivan is that he's not saying the things that he believes. He's constantly just talking for the sake of talking, or maybe being shocking. And Father Zosima, in fact, at the monastery early on in the book, warns Ivan of the dangers of saying things that you don't believe and thinking things that you don't believe. And so we have this long interlude where we learn the life of Father Zosima, and it's great. And he's a saint. It's this beautiful, long, extended portion where we get to learn about his life and his beliefs and the way that he looks at the world. And the time comes, other things happen, but the time comes and Father Zosima dies. It was long expected. He was old and sick and weak. Everybody had already been preparing for it. Father Zosima was even having his last conversations with various monks in the monastery, getting ready for his passing. And he dies. And according to the monastery's traditions, the monks are not given any ablutions. They are presented in a coffin for a period of time where the Gospels are read by other monks over the body. And Father Zosima was such a figure that the hearing of his passing immediately creates a stir in the town. And Father Zosima was practically a celebrity. Everybody knew him. Nearly everybody respected him and loved him and admired him, looked up to him, all of these things. He was a holy, saintly man. And so he dies, and the next day, the very next day, they're getting ready for all of these ceremonies that are going to be happening, to be reading over his body. And he stinks. There's an odor coming off of his body, unnaturally, we're told, unnaturally quickly. All of a sudden, in the 24-hour period, he smells incredibly bad. It's just this wretched, horrible smell, and he's in this closed monastery. There's the monks are sequentially learning the fact that they will come in and kind of silently acknowledge that there is a stink in the room, and it gets to the point where it's so bad that there's nothing that can be done to cover it up, and in fact it turns into a scandal. this putrefaction of Father Zosima, and it's so modern because it talks about how the town at large so quickly turns on him. All of these men and women, and fathers, children, throughout the whole entire town, just like today, they love the downfall. And it's an ungodly smell. It's an unnatural smell. And the rumor that is spreading is that it's his sin. And there's just like such a quick pivot on how quickly everybody in town just turns on him and goes, well, he was kind of full of himself. What kind of monk enjoys sweets and teas? And he really did like it when you bowed down in front of him, and all of these things. And it's terrible. It's really shameful and sad, but it's so incredibly relatable. Having a high figure that just comes crashing down in the public perception. Now, I personally find several moments in this portion of the book incredibly funny, but there is a sobriety that happens very quickly. Alyosha is taken aback by this, and he is faltering and questioning why all of this is happening, and he has an emotional reaction to this. He ends up leaving the monastery. He has some things happen. He meets this other person called Radican, and they go to what's her name's house, and all of these things. And then there's a moment of revelation. Alyosha comes back to the monastery. The Father Zosima's body is still out. There is a faithful monk still reading the Gospels over his body. And Alyosha sits and he's listening to the Gospels, and he either dreams or has a vision, but there's this moment where there's a mixture of messages between the Word of God and the words in the Gospels and the words of Father Zosima that all intersect and bring Alyosha direction and relief and comfort. He now can leave the monastery the way that Father Zosima told him to do. And it's a cathartic conclusion to this sometimes humorous, very dark, relatable and realistic, sad, touching death of Father Zosima. So those are my thoughts on that scene. It's to me it always kind of has stuck in my mind. I look forward to this portion each time it comes up. But those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. If you find it funny at all or not. I can understand both. So thank you for watching. Leave a comment if you would like, and take care.